Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Martin Englisher, the CEO of the Y. I want to welcome the mayor and the police commissioner here to the Y. It's a great honor to host them and the great work that they've been doing. We're so delighted that they've just committed through the City Council and with the mayor's support 1,300 new officers to join the force. And we as community leaders are excited because it means new things, because this mayor and this police commissioner have great new ideas for how to use these officers. I've been here 35 years in this agency as the CEO, and in these 35 years I've worked very closely with these officers. And now I have an opportunity, especially crime is down 95% in the 20 years I'm doing this. And it means so much to us as community leaders. This new initiative brings the community and police officers together in ways we've never done before. So, the training, exceptional training that's being done. I attended borough training for new cops that came out of the academy last year. I'm going next month. The ways that Commissioner Bratton is doing that is different than I've seen before. It's refreshing. We're welcomed in to be in the room, to sit there and be part of hearing the officers get trained, to contribute to the training. It's really a difference, and it's wonderful stuff. And you're going to hear much more today about new initiatives that the Commissioner and the Mayor have put together. And I'm confident these initiatives really are a strategy that's going to be a new day in New York City. And so, with that, well, I also want to add, one of the things that's happening with the NCOs, and I talk to the NCOs because I know them, they've been chosen so well, they're learning storekeepers, they're learning clergy, they're learning us as the heads of CBOs. They're getting deeper in the community and hearing things that they didn't hear before because they're doing things in a new way. And it's wonderful for all of us. It's a different way so that we can engage and maybe even encourage some of the people to join the police department and be part of it, and so that we can better reflect this mosaic of our city. So it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce the mayor of the city of New York, Bill de Blasio.
Thank you, brother. Well, thank you so much, Marty. Marty, you noted something very powerful that we should all take stock of for a moment. As you said, your experience in this community, crime down 95% from when you started. That's an amazing statement that all New Yorkers should be very proud of. A lot of people in this community contributed to that progress. Marty, you did for sure. This organization did. I heard a wonderful story earlier about not just one, but a number of young people who got involved with this organization as youth and became so invested in the future of their community, they later chose to become police officers. And that is an amazing, amazing reality. How many? 20? And how many are here? You guys have about 20 of them, you said? 20 young people that became?
Over the years I did 150.
That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. So I want to thank you, Marty, from the beginning, because your commitment, this organization's commitment, what it's meant for the safety of the community, what it's meant for helping some of the most committed young people from this community join the force and contribute to our ever-growing safety. That's an amazing story unto itself. Now, success has many fathers and mothers. We know this. And we should always remember in the 20-plus years of growing safety in this city, the crucial role that community organizations have played, clergy have played, block associations, tenant patrols, they've all played a big role. And many leaders have contributed, most importantly, the men and women of the NYPD every day. But I'll call up the commissioner in just a few minutes, but I also want to say, you mentioned that 95% over the time you've been here, Marty. Well, a lot of the credit goes to this man, because he started the ball rolling in a profound way. And I think it's a very gratifying moment for the work that you started, Commissioner, in your first tour of duty, to now come to the next level. And that's what's so exciting about this announcement. We are taking policing to the next level in this city, both in terms of deepening our safety and creating a true partnership between police and community. Let's be clear, that partnership has not been there in enough places. The thing we aspire to, that deep sense of mutual mission, shared mission between police and community, it is something we've seen in many instances and in many parts of the city, but we want to see it everywhere all the time because we need it for our future, and it can be done. And this vision is the pathway to that kind of deep and consistent partnership. I have such faith that we're starting on the road that, honestly, for years and years, people have sought but haven't been able quite to reach. This commitment that you'll hear about today to true neighborhood policing is truly transformative. It is a step in a direction of a sustainable model of police and community bonded together, a place we have never been in this kind of consistent way. I've heard the stories. I bet everyone in the room either heard the stories or experienced yourself the traditional form of neighborhood policing, a cop who really knew the community and the community knew him, and all the good that came out of that relationship. But over the years, all the policing models changed, and we moved away from some of that reality. Well, this is the best sense of the notion of coming full circle. This is a modern, advanced, sophisticated approach to neighborhood policing. That's going to mean the cop on the beat knows community leaders, knows the clergy, knows the rhythms of the community, the needs of the community, where the problems are, and the community is going to know that officer. And they're each going to feel a tremendous sense of connection and that they're in it together. And that is extraordinarily exciting all around. This plan, one city, safe and fair everywhere. The name says so much. One city united, one city with a shared goal, safety and fairness walking hand in hand. It really stems from the central idea that we owe it to our communities to keep them safe, and we owe it to our officers to keep them safe, and the two ideas unite when police and community are working together. That is the best guarantor of the safety of our neighborhoods and our officers. I want to flesh this out a little, but before I do, I want to just talk about the folks who are standing here with us. Again, some you will hear from in just a moment, including the Commissioner, but I want to thank First Deputy Commissioner Ben Tucker, Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism John Miller, Deputy Commissioner for Information Technology Jessica Tisch, Deputy Commissioner for Management and Budget Vincent Grippo, the Chief for Community Affairs Joanne Jaffe, Chief of Detectives Bob Boyce, Chief of Patrol Carlos Gomez, and I want to thank the Precinct Commander here in the 3-4, Deputy Inspector Chris Morello. I want to thank our elected officials, of course, Borough President Gail Brewer, and a special thank you to the two council members who are here with us. You know, the City Council pushed very hard, not just to increase the numbers of our police force, but to make sure it was based on a neighborhood policing model and the kind of reforms that the council has been calling for quite a while. So I want to thank the chair of the Council Public Safety Committee, Vanessa Gibson. I want to thank the council member from this district, Idanis Rodriguez. And I think all New Yorkers really need to say thank you to the New York City Council for helping to make this a reality. Let's give them a round of applause. So I'll be quick here. All of us, have done something extraordinary, bringing crime down to the level it's at now. That work's going to continue, and I think that work can deepen. I think there's new frontiers that we still haven't seen that we can reach. I think part of it is understanding that the best change, the best reform happens at the grassroots. So instead of a top-down approach where everything started when there was a problem, there was a call with a crisis, and an officer was sent out to deal with that crisis, we are now doing a bottom-up approach where the officer knows the community knows the officer. We stop the problem in many cases before it even happens. It's neighborhood policing, it's preventative policing. And it means that more and more of the people of this city will be encouraged to connect with police officers, to talk to them, to share information with them, to raise concerns to them. It's going to help the officers to do their job better. And so many officers want to deepen their connection to the community because they came to this work to help people, to make their lives better, to make their lives safer. And having that relationship to the community, knowing the information they need, getting the tips, getting the insights, getting that early warning of where a problem may be developing, that is manna from heaven for a police officer. And this model will allow that to happen on a regular basis. It'll allow real relationships to develop, real trust to develop. Think about it. You see the same officer, day in and day out, the same officer on the same beat in the same sector. That's going to develop a very different kind of reality and a deeper kind of trust. And then problems will be stopped before they start, and we have already some promising examples here from the 3-4 just over the last month or so. We've seen crime going down as this model has been piloted. We've seen shootings down, robberies down, assaults down, because that constant vigilance, that constant dialogue is helping officers to do their job better all the time. Commissioner Bratton brought to my attention and my team's attention and to the members of the City Council the examples, a couple of great officers from this precinct. One, Detective Tommy Trotman, who is present here today. Where are you, Detective? Detective, you may have heard that phrase, that classic phrase, to know me is to love me. Well, that's true about you. To know you is to love you. You are a hell of a guy. And how many years? 28? 28 years. So let me give you a real-life example, and there's the proof of it standing right there on the wall. There was an incident in these last few weeks. Detective Trotman was called to it, and there was an assault, and the attacker fled. So here it starts, in a sense, in a traditional manner. There's a call, and the detective responded to the call. Well, one of the bystanders at that incident had already gotten to know the detective and felt comfortable talking to him, came to him, went up to him after, sought him out, and told the detective everything he had seen. He identified the attacker and exactly where he believed the attacker to be. That led to the attacker's arrest. Now, that alone shows the promise of this vision, because that relationship and that trust led to communication, led to not just a tip, but an arrest of someone who had committed an assault. That would be a good story if that's where it ended, but that was not the end of the story. Because Detective Trotman takes this to the next level and has the kind of connection to the community, he went and had a conversation with the assailant's mother. He went to seek out the family of the young man who committed the crime. And the mother admitted that she knew her son had a drug problem. And she knew the drug problem was what was causing some of his criminal acts. And she didn't know what to do. And imagine if you were that mother and you had a situation in your home and you saw your son going down the wrong path and you saw the damage he was doing to others, but you didn't know how to get him help. The detective worked with her to get her connected to the kind of counseling and drug treatment resources that could actually turn her son's life around. That's going to take work. That doesn't happen overnight. But I believe that when a young man like that gets the treatment and comes clean, those are crimes that are never going to happen because the young man was turned toward the right path. All that because of one member of the NYPD who went the extra mile. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that under this vision. Let's thank the detective for all he does. I'll finish with some Spanish in a moment. I'll simply say this by way of English conclusion. And the commissioner obviously is going to talk about, and the Chief O'Neill is going to talk about some of the strategic meaning and operational reality of this vision. But what I love about it is all the things that we're talking about here are going to help this department become stronger in so many ways. It's going to touch every part of what the NYPD does. Obviously, everyone knows the commitment to technology that's already begun and will deepen, the commitment to training that's begun and will deepen, the commitment to fighting terrorism that now is deepened with the creation of a 358-member unit specifically focused on the use of our critical response vehicles with a higher level of training with the appropriate equipment for any situation that may be thrown at us, and in the process relieving our precincts of the need to keep donating cars and members of the precinct squad to anti-terror activity. This is going to help us do a lot of things simultaneously. This plan touches every precinct, touches the whole NYPD in one way or another. And I think it's going to help us not only stay the safest big city in the country, but continue on our pathway to even greater safety and even greater unity between police and community. In Spanish, estamos cambiando fundamentalmente la manera en que opera la policía. Los oficiales y residentes de las comunidades trabajarán juntos para mejorar la seguridad en las calles. La policía tendrá el tiempo y el entrenamiento necesario para desarrollar una mejor relación con los residentes, y los vecinos serán participantes activos en la lucha contra el crimen. Con confianza y respeto mutuo, tendremos una ciudad más segura para todos. With that, as I said a moment ago, the man who started us on this path and now is going to take us to a brand new place, a better place, and the next level of policing. I'm not going to overly flatter you by calling you the best police leader in America again, but it's true. Ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner Bill Bratton.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's great once again to be back in the 3-4. Some very significant thank yous are in order before I begin my brief remarks. Certainly to this mayor, who over these last 18 months has constantly delivered on the commitment that he had made to me when he offered me the position for the second time police commissioner, that he would do everything in his power to ensure that the shared vision that we had would be capable of being fulfilled. And capable means being resourced, being supported. In every step of the way during these last 18 months, that has been the case. So, Mr. Mayor, I have to personally thank you for the opportunity to be here before you with this plan. To the City Council, certainly that, and I regret very much that the Speaker is not here. Several of her colleagues are, and I thank them for being here, but the Speaker is shepherding the finalization of the budget, and I, for one, am very interested in that budget actually being signed, as you might expect.
You want that shepherded.
So a thank you to the City Council that over the period of time has heard our pleas, if you will, as well as our presentations. We have had a number of opportunities, OMB, the Mayor's office, over several months to talk about the vision and then respond to questions and articulation of what the needs would actually be. So implementation of this plan was very dependent on levels of resources. And I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council, because in this plan, they have literally given us everything that we asked for. They put us through a lot of hoops to justify it, a lot of meetings. Vinny Grippo, I'm surprised that black hair is still black, that many meetings with OMB, sweating it out, but he brought it home. And a particular thank you to my budget director, Vinny Grippo, because he's trusted, and that trust helped us to get to where we are today with this budget. Thank you certainly to the communities that have been very supportive of us, and we have a number of community members from the pilot precincts that this program has been up and running in the last 4 weeks with personnel that we self-funded from existing resources to get this thing kicked off and be in a position to support our arguments to the mayor and the city council that this in fact could be done. So I thank you, our community partners, for being here. The Police Foundation, represented by Susan Birnbaum, its president. Police Foundation, whose resources helped to fund so many of the initiatives that brought this plan about, the addition of the special advisors we brought on board, the funding of the 50 cameras that we're experimenting with, the body cameras. And without their efforts and support, this would have been a much more difficult and much lengthier process. So thank you to the foundation. There is a company that has chosen to base itself here in New York City, part of the technology revolution that's going on in this city. And it's a company that, one of the top technology firms in the world, that normally would find itself based in Silicon Valley, California, but they consciously sought to locate here. Have already provided 600 jobs to New Yorkers. They're here because this is where the talent is, and that company is rapidly expanding around the world. And they have offered us phenomenal amounts of in-kind services to bring about the plan of action presentation on the web that Chief O'Neill will present to you in a few moments. And if I could point back to the www up there, that is the address to go to see the plan of action that the Infor Corporation, Charles Phillips, who is hopefully going to arrive, and many of his staff are here, developed. And you're going to see their handiwork along with the expertise of our department to introduce that plan of action to you. In 1990, I would point out, as much as we're here in the 3-4 precinct, that this precinct at that time was the 3-4. It was divided, I believe, in 94, 95 when I was police commissioner because of its heavy workload into 2 precincts, the 3-4 and now the 3-3. In 1990, that one precinct had 103 murders in this one precinct. Last year, we had about 330 in the whole city, one precinct out of 77. 2014, the 3-3 had 2, and the 3-4 had 1. So I'm giving you these figures just to show you how you can create change and have it lasting, or as the mayor referred to, sustainable change. And in that regard, in 1994, I was privileged in a similar type of presentation to talk about the department's plan of action that at that time was designed, and this is it, the document from 1994, the plan of action for the NYPD, after a similar process but a less exhaustive process than the one we've gone through for these last 18 months. That document, the plan of action, and some of you in this audience that were covering us back in 1990 will remember these. These were the strategies. There were 8 of them. I have 6 of the original books here, dealing with gun violence, dealing with youth violence, dealing with domestic violence, police corruption, quality of life. This was the plan of action for the 1994 New York City, where crime and disorder had been out of control for almost 20 years. And with this, and with CompStat, the development of CompStat, for now 20 years, we have sustained every year a crime reduction in this city with what we created with the last plan of action that I was privileged to be part of. John Linder, one of the special advisors who worked with me in the Transit Authority in 1990, came with me in 1994, was back again to help guide this process once again. You're about to see Chief O'Neill present the 2015 version of the NYPD City of New York Plan of Action. It is also like the one from 1994 that 4 mayors and I believe 5 commissioners kept in place. Why? Because it worked. CompStat and the focus of quality of life worked for 4 mayors and 5 police commissioners. Similarly, what we are unveiling today, I am very comfortable that in years ahead, that it will have sustained itself and will have expanded. And it's very heavily focused on use of technology, and technology that we are embracing, technology that our partner, Cy Vance, Manhattan DA, with his funds and money that the mayor has generously supplied, is going to give us the most advanced technology in the United States of any police department. In many respects, will outrival the federal government over the next year. Smartphone technology, tablets, CompStat, something I'm a little fond of, 1994. This year, we will take it into the 21st century. It will be computerized. It will be paperless. It will be instant, up to the hour. The tools that we'll have to work with are nothing short of magnificent. And I'm so happy to be police commissioner at this time. So I'm going to basically step away from the platform because the major reason here is to expose to you the plan of action, significant parts of its operational strategy designed by Chief O'Neill, Chief Gomez, who are behind me, but key to its success, key to its sustainability. And I'd point to this slogan in the back, one city, safe and fair everywhere. There's 2 words missing, for everyone. For every one of our residents and for every one of our cops. Because this plan has been designed to treat them fairly too. because for many years they felt they were not treated fairly. They felt they were not respected for all that they had done. And so this effort, this plan of action, is intended to resource them, and the mayor was critical in the budget of ensuring that so much of what's being given to the cops was in there, because he understood that we needed them to be treated fairly so that they will treat you, the community, more fairly. And in final remark, in closing, I want to emphasize the heart and soul of this initiative, and that's the NCO, the Neighborhood Coordinating Officer. There are several behind me from the 3-4 precinct that have been involved. There are another 6, I think, on the wall, standing against the wall. They are the heart of what we are looking to do with this. They are your neighborhood cops. All of these officers are very active street cops, coming out of the street narcotics unit, coming out of the conditions unit. Almost all of them have 10, 15, or in the case of the detective, 28 years of experience. They want to be part of this. They want to have time to focus on crime. Make no mistake, this is focusing on crime also, as well as improving community conditions and relations. But we are putting our best, our brightest, our most dedicated into this initiative throughout the city. And I am very optimistic, as I was back in '94 when nobody thought we could get crime down, but now for 20 years, I am very optimistic that once again, 20 years from now, we'll look back at this time as a watershed event in the history of this department and this city. Thank you.
Before Chief O'Neill takes us into the future, I want you to hear from a man who's also been the front line here in terms of both keeping this community safe and ensuring that the young people of this community had greater opportunity and bonding police and community together. I want you to hear from his perspective what this change means at the community level. I'd like to welcome Eddie Silverio, Director of Alianza Youth Services, who brought his cheering section with him. 25 years he has been working with the people of this community and the PD, and now through Alianza Youth Services and Catholic Charities Community Services, continuing his great work. We welcome Eddie Silverio.
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon. I'm very excited because this mayor is doing something that hasn't happened in 20 years, is involving the community. The reality is that all of these great things that happen in Washington has happened because young people and the community CBOs got together and worked with the police, worked with the schools, worked with the families to ensure a safer community. So this is done for young people, and by the community. I want to thank the police officers, school safety, everyone that started listening to us, because the truth is that our young people have a voice. They may come at you differently, they may say it differently, but they have a voice. And we want to work together with the police officers. We want to work together with school safety. So I welcome this. This summer, we're going to have over 1,500 young people working in our community. We're going to have over 1,000 young people in our day camps. And we welcome the NCOs to come to our neighborhood, to come to our CBOs, to come into our cornerstones, our beacon schools. Thank the mayor for putting that money there as well, to ensure that we have around-the-clock safety for our young people. We'll be operating from 8 in the morning to 11 at night at our cornerstones, Monday to Friday. And we also are going to be operating on the weekends in our cornerstones from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So in hand with the police officers are going to be assigned to our cornerstones. So we're very excited about that. I want to also make sure that our community board has said thank you because they've worked with us close in hand, George, for making sure that the voice of the community has been listened to. But I really want to just say thank you to the mayor once again because this is the right way, involving the community, involving the people that really matter. So thank you, your mayor, thank you, commissioner, and I thank the officers that are ready to work with us hand in hand to make sure that we have a better and safer community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to also join in thanking the chair of the community board, George Fernandez. Thank you for your support in this, and we know that is an important role in this community. Thank you for taking it on. I have the honor of bringing forward Chief O'Neill. I think New Yorkers would be very, very impressed to know that our chief of department not only pores over the data during ComStat meetings, but we talk often, and the attention to detail in terms of any and all incidents happening around this city and what they mean is extraordinary. And I know this vision was something that Chief O'Neill worked on as a labor of love, and I think you're going to see that in his presentation. Chief of Department Jimmy O'Neill. Chief of the 2 hours.
I try to keep it to 2 hours.
That's good.
Just before I start, I'd like to thank the mayor. I'd like to thank the city council, and I'd like to thank Gail. Of course, I'd like to thank the commissioner for letting us, for helping us go forward with this plan. I've been a cop for 32 years, almost 33 years, and since the day I started, I've loved this job, and this is where we need to be, and this is where we're going to go. I'd also like to thank the executive staff behind me. I'd also like to thank the CO, the 3-4 and the 3-3. Rambo and Chris, thank you very much. But most of all, I'd like to thank the NCOs for stepping forward and getting fully involved in this program, and they're going to make it work. We also have 2 sector guys here also from the 3-4. If you guys can raise your hands, I'd like to thank you for the things that you do on a day in and day out basis for helping keep New York safe. So thank you very much. I'm going to do a couple of things here. First of all, I'm going to go through the Plan of Action website. I'm going to try to move through this quickly. This will be available. This will be live after the press conference. It's not live right now, but if you just bear with me for a little bit, I'm going to buzz through it. All right. So, the Plan of Action website: one city, safe and fair everywhere. If you come up to the first page, you'll see a quote from Commissioner Bratton. And I'm going to paraphrase for the sake of time. Today, 4 realities require change in the way the NYPD does its job. We must continue to control and reduce crime, especially violent crime, and that's our focus. That's what we do every day, especially what we do on Thursday mornings at ComStat. We must detect and deter terrorists, and thank you, John Miller, for working with the NYPD. We must win back community support and build productive partnerships with citizens, especially in communities of color, where resentment and fear of old police practices are most prevalent. And we must secure the safety and fair treatment of the men and women of the NYPD, many of whom have felt ill-prepared and undervalued. Our mission is urgent. The work is not easy, but together we can make New York City safe and fair everywhere for everyone. And that's from Commissioner Bratton. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, there'll be a 3-minute video by the handsome guy to the left of me. It's a great video. It puts all of this in perspective and what we're trying to do. And then you'll see a quote from Mayor de Blasio. I'm going to try to do you justice here. My charge to Commissioner Bratton is clear, and we are here to make sure he has what he needs to fulfill this charge. He's called to use the finest technology, the best tactics, to focus law enforcement efforts on the criminals that we know are out there, to reduce crime even further, to make our streets and neighborhoods safer, to make sure we are safe from the threat of terrorism which lingers over us every day, and to continue at the same time his groundbreaking work in progressive policing to make sure the NYPD is at the cutting edge of innovation and pioneering police strategies to foster and deepen relationships between the police and the communities that they serve. And that's from Mayor de Blasio. Moving through the website, you'll see there's a section on crime. You click on that. And then between 1960 and 1990, crime in America grew 13 times faster than the population. But in the past 25 years, the NYPD has created and refined a crime-fighting system that led the nation and proved that police can drive down crime. If you look at, as population grew from 1990 to present, it's at 8.4 million now. And if you look at how crime has been reduced, the number of index crimes, back in 90, we had 530,000. And this year we have last year we had in 2014, 106,000. So as population increased, we still managed to decrease crime. If you look at murders in the city, and this is a number I talk about all the time, especially the police commissioner referenced to 3-4. But in 1990, there were 2,245 homicides. Last year we had 330. That's a tremendous achievement. Transit crime, the number of riders has increased, almost doubled in the last 25 years, from 1 billion to 1.7 billion. And if you see the number of crimes, back in 1990 there were 17,000, and in 2014 there were 2,233. I think that's about 6 crimes a day. It's a tremendous achievement. While doing all of this, we've managed to have a reduction in the use of force and officer-involved shootings and fatalities. If you look at our arrests in 2014, only 2% of them required the use of force, and that's down from 8% in 1990. And if you look at firearms discharges, back in 1990, there were 40 deaths by the NYPD. Last year, there were 8. So we've showed tremendous restraint. You also see a 93% drop in stop, question, and frisk encounters since 2011. Misdemeanor arrests and criminal summonses are down over the last 3 or 4 years. And then one aspect of what Commissioner Bratton calls the peace dividend flowing from reduced crime is that New York City jail population is down by 45%, and the New York State prison population is down by 25%. And that's a number I don't think too many people realize how significantly the jail population has gone down. That the crime section ends with a quote from Commissioner Bratton, but as you go through the website, you'll be able to take a look at it. The next section is community, and most New Yorkers agree that the nation-leading decline in crime has made them safe. If you look at the research that was done, 80% of the people in this New York feel safe, or they feel safe in the city, as opposed to 20 that don't feel safe. This is where the problem starts to begin. While 80% of the people in New York have a feeling of safety, only 50% of the people in the city have an approval rate of the NYPD doing very good or just doing a good job. And those opinions vary widely by precinct. If you look at the 19th precinct, and that's on the Upper East Side, there's a 9% negative perception of the police. But if you go to the 7-5, which is in East New York, there's a 40% negative perception of the police. And then I also have the percentage of New Yorkers who think whites and blacks are treated equally by the NYPD. If you go through the demographics, 43% of white New Yorkers feel that way, 29% of Hispanics feel that way, and 11% of black African-American people in New York City feel that way. So there's a great disparity in those numbers. The gap in perception among whites, blacks, and Hispanics has remained consistent over time. There's another chart. If you look at it, the percentage of New Yorkers who approve of the way the NYPD is doing its job. And if you look from 1990 to 2014, it remains fairly consistent. And in New York, the most negative attitudes toward police are in the same communities where violence leads to the highest levels of fear and where the police are called upon residents to do the most. And this is a map of the city. The darker the blue is the less there is approval of the police. And if you look at the red, that's the cloud of violence, the homicides and shootings. So in the neighborhoods where the police are needed most, that's where we get our least amount of approval. There's another quote that ends this section, and the community section from Commissioner Bratton. And people in the neighborhoods that I just spoke of, there's a sense that, and this is unfortunate for the police, that this was all done at their expense, and there's a lack of trust in those neighborhoods. And so we have to move forward and bridge that gap. Not only bridge the gap, we got to get rid of that gap altogether. And now this next section is cops. NYPD officers, New York City's finest, put their lives on the line to keep New York City and its citizens safe. Yet some police officers felt isolated from their own department and from portions of the communities they serve. I've been a cop, like I said, since 1983. I love this job. I've always loved this job, and I want each one of the 35,000 police officers, the brave men and women of this department, to feel the same way. But right now, actually this was taken last April, 46% of the police officers have negative feelings, and that comes about from how they are viewed by the public. But even more distressing than that, 60% of the police officers that were polled back last April have negative feelings about the NYPD, and that mostly comes from their superiors and commanders. We need to rectify that. 56% have hesitated to be proactive in their job because of fear of being unfairly disciplined. 70% have a fear of being sued, and 85% is that threat of a CCRB complaint. And that's preventing them to fully appreciating and enjoying the job that they do. We've made vast strides in the area of CCRB. You'll be able to access on the web and see that also. We'll talk about training for 2 seconds. There's only, up until the 3-day training program that Ben put together, we only had a 50% approval rating on all the training that we do in one area, and that's firearms training. So if we are to extend the 25 years of dramatic crime reduction achieved by the NYPD, We must invest in training, equipment, and technology for our officers to enhance their effectiveness and improve their morale and ensure their safety. It's another quote by the Commissioner. So, how do we move forward? Today, the NYPD is reinventing the way cops and community, public and private entities all work as one team to fight crime even more effectively and ultimately to prevent crime, because that's what we're here to do, from happening in the first place. We have a plan to activate a shared responsibility, and that's what we need to talk about, shared responsibility. So let me just talk for a couple of seconds about the way precincts currently operate. If we can put up the first slide of the 3-4. We need the first slide of the 3-4. The website wasn't being moved by voice activation. Natalie was helping me. Okay, this is what the 3rd platoon looks like currently in the 3-4. This is the way this was before they went into the pilot project. So most precincts throughout the city, and you have the smaller precincts have about 100 cops, the larger precincts like the 7-5 have about 400. And half the people assigned to those precincts are assigned to sector cars. The other half are assigned to specialty units conducting summary enforcement, doing administrative work, and we're neither giving them the time nor the opportunity to what we've been asking them to do over the last 25 years. It's really a top-down model of policing. The decision-making and problem-solving at the police officer level was almost non-existent, and we didn't really give anybody the chance for positive community interaction. If you're in a sector car in the 4-4 or the 4-6 on a Friday, Saturday night, you're running from job to job to job, probably doing 25 to 30 jobs a night. And if you're in SNU, you're in conditions, or if you're in anti-crime, you're conducting some sort of summary enforcement. So we've been asking our cops to have connectivity to the community, yet we really have not given them the opportunity to do that. So this is with the pilot project, this is how we're going to be able to do this. Sure. Thanks. All right, so how are we going to change the precincts? With neighborhood policing, we're going to be connecting with a neighborhood's problems, its people, and its potential. And how are we going to do that? We're going to have steady sectors, the same 2 officers in the same sector every day. This is what in the police jargon is called sector integrity. So we're going to create familiarity, and we're going to create the connectivity to the community, because the community is going to see the same 2 cops every day. And in the busier sectors, we're going to have two RMPs as sectors. In addition to sector cops, we're going to have NCOs, and these are the people that we talked about before. They're going to be dedicated to specific sectors, its people, its problems, and its potential. There'll be 2 NCOs per sector with flexible tours, and we've invested a tremendous amount of training in all of these NCOs. What we're looking to do is we're looking to despecialize. We became a department that's become so specialized over the last 25 years that it's time to get back to the generalist cop. And with the steady sectors, with the NCOs working in the steady sectors also, we're going to create that familiarity, we're going to create that connectivity. In addition to the steady sectors, the NCOs, we're also going to have response autos, because the key component to this program is giving our cops uncommitted time, not being on the radio, not running from job to job to job. So by putting the additional police officers, by despecializing and putting people back in sectors, we're going to create time for them to do what they want them to do, what we want them to do. And it's not only attending community meetings, it's not only attending to tenant association meetings, it's about solving problems and identifying problems with the community. And I think Fabio and Tommy, you're doing a terrific job so far, and it's only been 5 weeks. In addition to the way we're redeploying, there's going to be technology used in each and every one of these pilot precincts. Each RMP is going to have a tablet, and each police officer is going to have a smartphone that will enable them to do the job that they need to do. This is a cultural change for the NYPD. This is actually a sea change. What it's going to do is it's going to allow the police officers to have that sense of purpose and live meaningful lives, have that connectivity, and there'll be an appreciation of what they do by not only the community, but by the police department itself. And this is going to go a long way to bridging the gap between the police and the community. And if we work it right, it's actually going to do away with the gap altogether. And as we get paid to do, our primary focus is on crime. This is all about keeping the people in this city safe. And I think as we move through this program, we're certainly going to be able to do that. So that's our plan, and I think it's a very worthwhile plan. It's going to be best for the people of this city, and it's going to go a long way to making everybody safe. Thank you.
If I may, in summary, before opening up for questions, emphasis, the focus of the plan is on 5 areas. Back in '94, it was the 8 strategies. Now it's the 5 areas of technology you've heard a lot about, the continuing fight to keep the city safe against terrorism and the new terrorism of ISIS-inspired terrorist acts. It's about the idea of training, the need for much more that the mayor and the council funded last year and that we'll continue to move forward with. It's about the issue of tackling crime, and that's the new precinct concept of officers assigned to the same sector while dealing with the crime, dealing with the community to understand what are the problems and the priorities in their particular sector. And lastly, it's about trust. The 5 T's, the most important being trust. We need to regain it where we've lost it, we need to increase it where we have it, and we need to restore it wherever we can. And we're very comfortable that this plan addresses all of those issues. We believe, as does the mayor, quite obviously, and the city council, in supporting the plan and the intimate documentation that we gave to them, that this will, in fact, keep this city safe everywhere for everyone. Lastly, the numbers involved, a quick explanation of that before your questions. Council funded 1,297 new officers. We are committing to civilianization of 415 additional positions. Last year, we committed to civilianizing 200, and we achieved that. 358 officers of that number will go into the new counterterrorism unit. We will be self-funding the approximately 50 supervisors that will be necessary for that unit. So that unit will be over 400 officers. Additionally, every day, we will need about 176 officers to go to training. City funded that to $25 million last year. We will be self-funding that within our resources this year. And lastly, that we recently reorganized our borough task forces. These are the entities that deal with demonstrations, go into spiking crime areas. We now have 600 volunteer officers, approximately 150 more than we had before, all specially trained, all specially equipped, who will be able to significantly work on demonstrations and crime events, and we believe also help us deal with some of the overtime issues that we are committing to address as we go forward. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, sir?
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to do on topic first, and then we will go to off topic, starting with on topic. On topic.
Mr. Mayor, so outside of the counterterrorism unit, and this may be for the commissioner as well, this is kind of a back to the future thing, right? So you're going back to the basics of beat cops and cops.
1829. So Robert Peel.
Why don't you jump in? It was a good start.
Exactly. In taking advantage of 2015, 1829, the 9 principles, you hear me talk about them all the time. The basic mission for which we, the police, exist is to prevent, not measure our success by response, but to prevent crime and disorder. In the 70s and 80s, we didn't do a very good job preventing crime. We paid no attention to disorder, and we saw what the city looked like in 1990. So this is effectively back to the future. Everything old is new again. And the idea of cops in a community who are known to the community, who care about that community, and what Jimmy O'Neill and Chief Gomez have designed is a plan that will give a lot of those cops time away from the radio to work on crime issues, to work on other issues. Community policing, something I've embraced for many years, this is neighborhood policing because it's more intimate, neighborhood by neighborhood. Partnership, police and community, working to identify what are the problems and priorities that need to be addressed to ensure safety and quality of life, with a focus on the prevention of those problems rather than just responding to them as we've done for so many years. It's also about decentralization. Jimmy wants every one of his precinct commanders and every one of these NCOs and every one of those sector car officers to have ownership, to have pride of ownership, to have pride of authorship in creating the resolutions to the identified problems, and it's about transparency. Transparency, and as much as this plan of action will be available to this afternoon, I'm sending out a message to all 35,000 of my cops, all of whom now have email addresses, as to how to get up on this site and see this plan. The public can go see it. It's all about transparency, and our CompStat system is increasingly transparent. So this is 2015, a plan for this century, but it is very much informed by 1829.
This plan is called One City, Safe and Fair Everywhere, yet the press release says that this is going to be expanded to additional precincts, not all precincts. So a couple of questions. How many precincts will this be implemented in? When is that happening? Are you guys going to expand it to all precincts eventually? And will there be any precincts on Staten Island included in this strategy?
You are consistent. Before the commissioner or the chief get into the detail, as I said earlier, this plan affects the entire city. It changes the philosophy. It changes the way we train. It means for every precinct benefits in terms of staffing levels, as we said, because, for example, the anti-terrorism unit will not require officers and cars to be pulled out of precincts. Every precinct will benefit. And obviously, it's flexible in that the approach can be applied where the need is greatest. So I think it's important for people to realize this is going to have a helpful impact on the whole city, and it's certainly going to allow us to pinpoint where the need is greatest and have a very strong impact on reducing crime. Why don't you speak to the mechanics?
Let me just expand on that. The 5 T's, the terrorism initiative, whole city. Training initiative, every police officer, whole city. Technology, whole city. Trust, whole city. Tactical initiatives on crime, whole city. Staffing. In a week, I graduate a class of 800 to 900 officers. Every precinct in this city will be getting officers from that new class coming out. As the mayor mentioned, by having the new terrorism unit as a standalone unit, instead of every day and every night pulling a car out of every precinct in the city, every precinct in the city gains that extra car on those tours of duty. So the whole city is benefiting from this plan. Some areas of prioritization, the pilot program certainly, and over time as we acquire these new officers, high crime areas initially, but over time as we reduce crime throughout the city, we will be able to take this initiative throughout the city. We will graduate a class of 1,200, we'll be hiring a class of 1,200 in July. We'll hire another 400 in October, and then every 3 months after that, we'll be hiring 400. So by July 1st of next year, all of the officers promised in this plan will be graduating and out in the field. We are going to go to a quarterly system of training. We did have 2 classes a year. We're going to go to quarterly classes 4 times a year so we can reduce the size of them, so we can have much more intimate training for these new officers. And every officer coming out of the academy, this class, is going to be assigned to a field training officer. They're not going to impact zones. They're going into precincts where they get to know the community, where they get to work with seasoned officers who will mentor them and train them. A totally new concept for this city, but again, it goes back many years to what we used to do. Thank you. You've been asking this question for a week. We've answered as much as we're going to answer it. Sorry. Okay.
Again, that's in development. Again, let's just be clear before I go on to the next question. This is a brand new plan, and they're going to determine which precincts get served in which order according to need.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering what the takeaway or the message you want New Yorkers to have, having seen this whole new approach to policing. What's your message to them? What do you want them to believe?
Neighborhood policing, it's the cop on the beat again. It's neighborhood cops knowing their community, getting to know community residents, getting to know block associations. It's people at the neighborhood level knowing they can walk up to a police officer, let them know what's going on, share a tip with them, Tell them what they need. And I think this is something, it is back to the future on one level. It really is making this about the human scale again, where the police officer is the person you should confide in because they're there to protect you, and building that trust, that very natural trust. What I think is going to happen in everyday life in the precincts that experience this new approach is you're going to see the officer in your neighborhood a lot, and you're going to get to know them, and that's going to be a good thing for the city.
Mr. Mayor?
Wait, hold on, back first, go ahead.
In the past, when this has been done, and the cops got familiar with the neighborhoods in intimate ways, express one of the weaknesses of that program in the past was that, unfortunately, the overfamiliarity, it breeds sometimes corruption, bribery, they get a little too familiar. How are you going to address that?
I'll let the experts speak to the best way to manage the situation, but I want to say this. I don't think the mistakes of the past or the problems of the past should paralyze us from moving into the future. Right now, we know, and I think the survey that Chief O'Neill went over makes it abundantly clear, we've got to build real trust between police and community. We have to do it for everyone's benefit. And that's only going to work with human relationships. It's true in all parts of life. You get to know someone on a human level, you get to respect them, you get to understand them, you get to trust them. That has to happen. When we do that right, a lot of the tensions, a lot of the challenges, we're going to move past, but we're also going to get safer. That's the exciting part of this. It does two things at once. It's going to make us safer. So, of course, there's going to be all sorts of challenges, but I am convinced this is a plan that's going to yield a great impact. Commissioner?
In the strategies I introduced you from 1994, one of them was police corruption, because in 1994 that was a major problem, as the Mullen Commission clearly indicated. We addressed it, and the good news going forward, we have continued to address it, so that there's no longer the significant problem it was in 94, and the major problem was in the 1970s when Pat Murphy, the commissioner at that time, had to address it. Do we still have, unfortunately, some corruption, and do we still have some brutal officers? We do. But I've also got a great Internal Affairs Bureau headed up by one of our best investigators, Deputy Commissioner Joe Resnick, and I'm very comfortable that we're on top of that. I'm very comfortable that we don't have systemic corruption in the department, and in this day and age, I'm not overly concerned that the bad old days are going to come back relative to that. I have trust in my officers that they can go into communities, work with communities, and not be corrupted by them. And that's a confidence and pride. One additional, before I step away and the mayor goes back to questions, there are two documents that will be available to the media and some of the community members who are here that to support the website that is going live now. And this is one that points out the 5 T's that we talk about, and then there's an expansion on the 5 T's and a lot more information about neighborhood policing. So these two, I think, will help you as you work your way also through the web plan of action.
You talked about the need to hire more African-American officers. I was wondering if you could lay out some specifics on what you've done so far since taking office to meet that goal.
Well, let me speak to my vision of that, and then let, of course, the commissioner and anyone else from PD speak to the measures they're taking. I think this has to be understood as a chicken and egg reality. We need to keep building trust between police and community, and at the same time, that will encourage particularly a lot of young people of color to join the NYPD and to feel that it's the right choice for them. So part of this is resolving some of the problems of the past to open the door to more and more people understanding what a great career this would be for them and what a great way to serve the city. What I believe in, and we've been starting on, is deeply involving elected officials, clergy, community leaders of all kinds. I think in the past, government has made the mistake of attempting to reach communities in a very narrow way. The best way to reach communities is, again, at the grassroots level through the leaders who are known and trusted and respected. When someone in a community level hears their priest, their minister say, this is the right thing to do, we need you to do this, we believe you can do this. When someone on your block says, look, there's an exam, you should take the exam and join the NYPD, it resonates. And when family members, more than anybody, when family members say, this is the right job for you and this is something we believe in, it helps so much. So I think we're not only going to improve how we recruit and who joins us in the recruitment, we're also going to change the whole backdrop.
Do you feel like you have to kind of build some goodwill before you can really?
I think, again, it's when I say chicken and egg, I think some of it we can do right now with better approaches to recruiting and working better with community leaders and members. I think the other piece of the equation is by changing the overall atmosphere, more and more people will think, hey, this is a job I want to be a part of. You want to speak to it? Sure.
So the mayor got it right. We're doing a variety of things as we started to look at our recruitment process. If I'm not mistaken, Pervez Swahani from the Journal did a piece earlier today that speaks to that issue, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing. But the process, and this is a larger issue beyond just the fall off in the African American males that we've been trying to entice to come into the job, and so we're working on that as well, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But we also have to fix as we look closely at the process, we need to look at the length of time it takes for people to come into this job. So you can take the exam today, and 3 to 4 years might pass before you are actually called to come into the job. That's ridiculous. I mean, we can't continue to expect that we lose 50% of the applicants drop out of the process. And so what we want to do is get the very best people, as we have in the past. Some of the things we've accomplished, these officers standing along the walls, we want to get people who share their values to come into the job. And so, so that's one of the objectives, is to shorten this to a one-year process. We've spoken with DCAS to begin to move in that direction. So and the goal is to retain at least 50% more of those folks who would drop out. Certainly, we want to improve diversity in regard to your question of the classes, both in terms of African American males, but also in the broader context. For example, Asian women don't come into the department in large enough numbers, we believe, and so we are looking at that issue. And then also we looked at our ability to process properly. So we've got our processes spread all over the city, so we want to improve efficiency and customer service. There's a feedback that we've gotten from some of the folks who have applied. We reached out to about 1,200 folks to ask why they dropped out of the process, and very often they were dissatisfied with the process and the way in which they were treated. So we are moving to improve our candidate assessment process in a variety of ways. So we've done a number of things. We want to suspend exams from now through July, because you can walk in and take an exam. That process doesn't make any sense right now. We have 62,000 people that are on 46 separate hiring lists at the moment, and so we want to improve that, and we'll be hiring off those lists as we move forward. We also we're developing a new recruitment campaign that will attract candidates that we are looking for, again, that meet the values, the compassion, the service, the desire to serve, and so forth, who want to be part of the effort to restore the trust that we've been talking so much about between the police and community. And finally, we are going to consolidate our candidate assistance process. We're taking it all to the old police academy on 20th Street. We're going to consolidate 3 locations that are now scattered around at one police plaza, one in Brooklyn and one in Queens, and move those all to one site. So we're going to make it more user-friendly. We want to make it, when you walk through the door and the place is clean and the people who greet you are professional, that's going to make a difference as to whether you decide that you want to be a part of this organization. We want people to feel that way. I know they will when they get a sense of what the plan of action promises to the city going forward. People want to be a part of that.
Thank you very much, Dean. Wait, say again? Say again? We're sorry if we're giving you too much information, Dean. Yeah. What you complain when we don't give you enough information. We tried something new today. There you go.
Commissioner, instead of doing 2 classes a year at the academy, you're going to do 3 or
4, and what is it?
The class coming in July will be approximately 1,200 officers. Next class coming in, we anticipate will be October, 400. Next class, 3 months later, 400. And we'll hire at that pace so that by the end of next fiscal year, June 30th, we will have hired up the 1,297 officers that the council and the mayor are authorizing, plus the normal attrition of about 1,400 or 1,500 that we normally experience each year. And then going forward, we are hoping as part of our plan of action changes to have smaller classes in the academy. We're also hoping to eliminate that 50,000 candidate backlog in the pipeline so that every year I'll give an exam, I'll hire for a year, and then we end the list and give another exam. So I always have fresh, contemporary people. Who the hell wants to wait around 4 years to get a job in today's society? And we're losing 50% of the candidates who drop out because they find other jobs. So this has been a major issue. And in that pipeline, we have a lot of candidates of different backgrounds, races. And for example, we have identified 54 black males who had dropped out, who our Guardians Association have approached about getting back in the process. And our expectation is the majority of them will be in this class that we'll hire in July. People who would have been gone otherwise, but for Ben Tucker and Mike Julian finally trying to fix this crazy system that we currently have.
I'm glad you asked.
What you've described for police officers, it sounds like a role that's almost akin to a social worker. And you have a force of people who maybe didn't think that's what they were signing up for. Are you hearing any of that? Are you concerned about any pushback from folks?
Just as I pass to the commissioner, I think that's a misreading. I'm speaking as a layman. We'll let the experts speak. Learning what a community is going through, learning who are the right informants, getting people to give you leads as to where criminals may be, where weapons may be. The example I gave of the detective, who upon arriving at the crime scene, because he had already developed some relationships, got a witness to tell him where the criminal was. Doesn't sound like social work to me. That sounds like policing. Over to you, Commissioner.
Good policing.
So our primary mission, of course, is fighting crime. And if you look at some of the precincts throughout the city, probably the top 15 in violence, we've managed to push homicides and shootings down, but I think we can push them down even further, and the only way we can do that is with the help of the community. So our primary function is still fighting crime. That's what we get paid for.
I'd point out that the initial group of 8 NCOs that you've been introduced to, some of them, all of them are some of the most active cops in this precinct. They're coming out of narcotics units, coming out of conditions units. They're coming out of units that are focused very heavily on crime. But their skills also include being able to deal with crime in ways in which we can build trust instead of creating alienation. So this was the same argument that was used with community policing in the 1990s. We're recruiting warriors and then making social workers. No, we want people who can do it both. We want people who can deal with crime, but do it in a way that they get satisfaction from what they're doing, and the public gets satisfaction from how they're doing it.
Okay, on topic, yes.
Do you think any of the policies or initiatives here would be impacted if the city council moves forward with a criminal ban on police chokeholds, on passage of the Right to Know Act, or in any other police reform issues that they're going to be hearing on?
Look, you know my view on those issues, and I think each issue should be treated on its own. The bottom line is this set of reforms, I think, is going to make a huge difference, and I think it's going to really restore a lot of the faith that we want people to have in our police. And I think the whole world will see things in different perspective as these reforms deepen. But as for those pieces of legislation, at the appropriate time, we'll discuss them again. My position is quite well known.
Would this plan be possible without the 1,300 new cops that you're adding? And so, why were you resistant for quite some time to add the cops?
I'll summarize again. I think several of you have heard this, but I'll let the commissioner speak to what's possible or not possible under any scenario. But from my point of view, the commissioner and I, over the last year and a half, have talked about the future of this department. It's been a constant conversation. Although we formally meet weekly, we tend to talk every day in some form or another. And it's been a very deep, thoughtful conversation, I think, and I have really worked hard with him to figure out where we need to go. But what it really required was a full evaluation and a formal evaluation. This guy doesn't do anything lightly. He doesn't do anything unscientifically. So that evaluation concluded fairly recently. And as a result of it, the commissioner had a vision for neighborhood policing that required these resources and plays out in this fashion. And at the same time, we've been having an ongoing conversation about what we need to do about new terrorist threats and ways that we could better address them, but also free up troop strength at the precinct level. So from my point of view, this happened very organically. The conversations were continuing. They were not gelled by May 7th at the time of the executive budget. There was still a lot more to talk about. I think the commissioner alluded earlier to my deep interest in cost savings, and those were two areas that we saw an opportunity. And yes, we made Mr. Grippo earn his money. We cut his salary as part of the cost savings plan. Oh, sorry, we didn't mention that, Vinny. We were very concerned, as was the City Council, about civilianization potential and about overtime limitations. And again, when we say that, we're talking about the entire department. We're not talking about how it affects an individual officer. We're talking about trying to get the overall category of overtime to work within certain budgetary boundaries like every other agency. So as those reforms got clarified to the tune of about $70 million a year, it certainly made it easier for me to feel good about the additional investments. And finally, as I said, the City Council, they're my partners in government. This obviously was a high priority for them, and as we talked about a lot of items, it was one of the things they kept coming back to. So I think this came about in the way, the government process is supposed to work. The ideas were put forward. A lot of us were won over by those ideas. We found a way to afford it. We found a way to save the money we could save at the same time. And now I am very, very excited about where this is going to take us. Yes?
Chief O'Neill showed a graphic before that showed police officers, I'm not holding for the statistics, that the majority of cops were pulling back on, feeling that they needed to disengage, they fearful of suits, or fearful of CCRB. What are you going to do to remedy that going forward and to monitor that as you go forward?
Well, as the commissioner noted, the core of that survey data was from about a year ago, but we don't take it any more lightly because of that. And to the question of monitoring, I think it's fair to say the commissioner and his team are data collectors on the grandest scale and will constantly be testing to see how things are working with the men and women of the force. But I think the answer to those specific concerns has been clearer and clearer. The commissioner, and he can speak to, has obviously changed some of the approach to discipline in a way that's more fair to our officers. There was a real concern about frivolous lawsuits. We addressed this several months ago with the directive to the law department to actually spend more money to challenge frivolous lawsuits, even though that's a costly endeavor. The goal is to change the reality fundamentally, to stop this phenomenon of frivolous lawsuits and to fight back to the point that we really turn the tide. I think that sent a clear message to our officers. The increased speed of CCRB cases. Right now, I think we have the average, if I'm remembering correctly, under 9 months, and we're going to continue to push that number down. It used to be, sadly, the CCRB case could be unresolved for a year or more, several, and that was not fair to the officer, and that was not fair to the complainant. So we're really addressing a lot of the core concerns and valid concerns that the officers had. But we're going to obviously make sure that as that happens, it is articulated, and then we'll see the impact it has. Want to add?
Actually, the improvements right up there.
There you go. Look at that. You want to speak to it?
As Mayor pointed out, when we did the survey with the officers, it was quite clear coming in 2014 that morale in this department was not good. We did the survey to determine what was impacting morale. And we have begun to address over this past year, and we'll continue with this new budget, to address all those issues. As it relates to discipline, CCRB, fear of CCRB complaints, why are they fearful of them? Because they can't get promoted or they can't get transferred with an open CCRB complaint, and very often the city will not indemnify or represent them if they have an open CCRB complaint. So it's no wonder they're damn scared of CCRB complaints, particularly when a lot of those CCRB complaints are not justified or frivolous. Not to say that all of them are, but many of them are. So what we have done, working with Richard Emery, the new head of CCRB, as he reorganizes his entity, we're quite pleased that even as the department is continuing to push crime down, the number of complaints to internal affairs and to CCRB are down dramatically. The amount of time it takes to process those complaints is down dramatically. The amount of discipline I have to distribute because of that reduced level of complaints, that reduced level of findings that show the officer behaved inappropriately. It is our expectation, and I will be coming out next week with a white paper presentation to the men and women of the department. I gave it a presentation to my union leaders this week on all the things they expressed concern about in the disciplinary process. We have fixed every one of them. Every one of them has been fixed and corrected and adjusted. And I'm just going to remind them of that to make sure that every officer in the department who will get my email about information like you see on the screen there. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Off topic now? All right. Off topic it is. Will we allow one more on topic? I think we're in a generous mood. Go ahead.
Just to be totally clear, you've given us a lot of details about how you're going to be doing this, but how is it, community policing was a term that we've heard a lot. This is neighborhood policing. And what is the difference between, community policing, which we've seen over decades, versus this new model of neighborhood?
I'll let the commissioner speak, but I just want to say what I like is I think it says even more clearly the most local level. We're talking about an officer who gets to know a sector and then becomes a part of the life of that sector. That is the neighborhood. That is right there where people live. And I like it because of the immediacy and the urgency of the term. And it's a term that, in a sense, is new to the discussion, which amplifies the fact that this is a new vision. This is a place we haven't been before.
And going back to my theme, everything old is new again, the initiative that I created in 1976 in Boston was called the Neighborhood Responsive Policing Program. It has many of the elements of what Chief O'Neill has just described and designed. Boston, like New York, is a city of neighborhoods. That we think of Manhattan, we think of Brooklyn, but when you talk to people, they talk about, I live in Park Slope, I live here, same for Boston. You might live in Dorchester, but you live in Meeting House Hill. In Boston, it's what parish you live in. Here, people tend to identify by their PS number. So this plan is intended to focus on community policing, the whole community in New York. This is neighborhood by neighborhood, having cops that are assigned to a neighborhood who have ownership of that neighborhood, who have pride in that ownership. So the term neighborhood is purposely intended to be used instead of community policing. It has all the elements of community policing, but it identifies more with New York, which is a city of neighborhoods.
Amen. All right, we are now going off topic. Grace. Yes, hold on one second. We're just going to let...
We're going to clear out most of the police from the background.
We thank you very much. Thank you.
Get some water.
All right. Okay, we're going to off topic. Grace. Breaking news, Grace.
Governor Cuomo saying that the city of New York is very, very well in the legislative package. The bill that we pursuing right now is a great package for New York City. Do you agree with him? Why not? Can you explain a little bit more about your assessment of how New York City has come out in this legislative?
Well, as you know, right now, they're just at the final point in the legislative process. So I'll give you a very broad overview, but I'm going to reserve my rights to see the final product. Everyone who's familiar with Albany knows there's a lot of shaking out in the last hours of the process. I think at this moment, as I said yesterday, we were carefully watching and involved in, obviously, the issue of rent and the issue of 421A. I think some real progress has been made on rent. I think in the future there'll be more to do, but some real progress has been made. So far, what we've seen on 421A leaves me optimistic that many of the original goals that we sought to achieve are being achieved. But again, I'm going to reserve my rights to see the final details. What we said in terms of 421A is it had to focus on affordability in a very consistent manner. And from what I'm hearing so far, the bill's moved in that direction. But we'll have a lot more to say as we get more detail. Again, because this is breaking news, I'm going to wait till we see the whole package, and then we'll give you some more formal response.
What is the status of the search for Tariq Arnold?
Again?
What is the status of the search for Tariq Arnold?
Just status,
What are we talking about?
Search.
I think you all know Chief Bob Boyce, Chief of Detectives. Bob?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the matter of Tariq Arnold, we are actively seeking him now. We visit over 50 locations looking for him. He is a gang member, so every one of his gang members that we've identified, we've knocked on their door. We have the regional task force plugged into this as well, so those locations are also out of state, but for the majority they're in Manhattan as well, so we feel confident we're going to find him. We have a very tight ring set around the upper Manhattan and as well as the neighboring states.
Yes.
The governor all but just said that, he was the anonymous official who has said some things. The governor, in a response to the question in Albany, recently just said, all but said he was the anonymous official who was going to trash the new administration this week. What do you make of the comments that you've heard from the governor about you and your administration?
Again, we are focused right now on policy. I know that's a little hard to take in, but what we care about in Albany is the policies that are being determined as we speak. That's where my focus will remain. When we get a sense of everything that's being finalized, then there'll be an opportunity to talk about the overall process.
Mr. Mayor, today was the graduation at John Dewey High School, where a number of students graduated under a cloud because there's been an ongoing investigation of grade fixing. The original charges were brought to the Department of Education in May of 2014. It's now June of 2015. Are you satisfied with the pace of the investigation? And don't you think something should be done, given the fact that some people are graduating probably without...
I need to ask the Chancellor to status that. I don't want to give you a detailed answer without hearing directly from the DOE, so we'll be happy to get you an answer once we get more information. Again, it depends on the instance, and I don't want to prejudge. Yes.
Haitian people. Now, what do you mean exactly? Because some people don't understand.
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to say on this issue, as I said on Sunday, this is not about the people of the Dominican Republic. It's about the policies of the government of the Dominican Republic. And those policies, in my view, are leading to the potential expulsion of between 100,000 and 200,000 people who have a common characteristic. They are either people of Haitian descent or presumed to be, and they're obviously people of African descent. And from everything that the reports we've received from international human rights monitors and the United Nations, this constitutes a potential expulsion on a level we have rarely seen, particularly from an allied nation, near our borders. And it sends a horrible message in a world where issues of immigration are so deeply debated at this point in history. For a country to move on such a mass scale to deport people, including many people who have only known that as their home, not just in their own lives, in their families' lives, even for another generation or two before, it's an immoral policy, and I said it is bluntly a racist policy. So we're calling upon the government of the Dominican Republic to stop this policy dead in its tracks. And I was joined on Sunday by leaders, very prominent leaders of the Dominican American community and the Haitian American community in unity. And by the way, in a world of bad news stories, I think there's a good news story that should be looked into here, that brave Dominican American leaders stood shoulder to shoulder with Haitian American leaders to say this does not represent our values, and we're going to defend our brothers and sisters in the Dominican Republic of Haitian descent.
Mr. Mayor, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is leading the charge to remove the name of Robert E. Lee from the main thoroughfare of Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. How do you feel about that, and what do you think of the Confederate flag?
Well, look, the Confederate flag has to come down in the various locations. It is now, for example, obviously the movement's finally moving on South Carolina, but the various state capitals and other prominent public locations, that flag needs to come down. It is sadly a symbol of division and hatred, and it needs to be taken out of circulation. I agree with President Obama, who said it should be in a museum. As for other permutations or other examples of our past, and there are many, I agree with the concept that there should be some kind of commission to look at how we deal with these issues of things that have been named after people from the Confederacy, but I don't think we can isolate one place or another. I think this has to be looked at as a larger question. The thing I think we can all agree on is Confederate flag has to come down.
What would be your policy in dealing with person in your administration, both your personal friend, the governor, bumping into confidence in the press?
Well, I appreciate another version of the question. That shows creativity. Again, my focus right now is on the issues being worked on literally as we speak in Albany that will affect the people of the city. From the beginning of this process, I said we're talking about issues that affect millions of people. That's my focus, not personalities. We're going to work on finishing the session in Albany, and then we'll talk about other things. Last one, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, you're a Red Sox fan. Pedro Martinez today took a swipe at you over this whole issue in the Dominican Republic. Does this hurt? I mean, what do you think of this?
I thought you were going to say Pedro Martinez threw a brushback pitch at me. I mean, do I have to write your material for you? I mean, come on. I think the world of Pedro Martinez, he's wrong on this, in my opinion. This is a moral issue. And the notion that tens of thousands, even between 100 and 200,000 people could be expelled simply because they're black, it's not a complicated issue. So I think the world of Pedro, but I stand by my position. Thanks, everyone.